Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, listener. I am so excited. I have a new best friend. Jeremy is with us today, and I am so excited to talk to Jeremy. We are going to talk about processing trauma and healing ourselves. And he's going to focus primarily on tarot, but we're going to experience and flow with all sorts of modalities that we can use from the metaphysical world into healing ourselves and becoming whole. And I know that you're not half, you're not a quarter, you are whole, but you're hidden behind all these learnings and all these trainings. And we want to break free from those. Trauma, we hide behind trauma. We hide behind all of this stuff because we don't want to get hurt again. Jeremy, help my listener let go of these crazy things that are controlling their lives and let them feel like themselves again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I just got chills, to be completely honest with you. It's an honor to be here. It's definitely something that I feel deeply, deeply invested in. And if I may, I would love to share a little bit about my own journey towards tarot.
Yes,
if that's all right.
Please.
Just kind of as a context for it. And I want to preface this story just a little bit, just by sharing that this was my own personal experience. And as I'm sure many can attest to in their own personal lives, some of these stories definitely have heavy moments and heavy experiences in the background. This particular one does center around a certain amount of religious trauma. While I have no particular feelings for or against any particular religion or belief system, I just want to recognize that this particular story may touch on that a little bit. So it's kind of my way of almost sharing a little bit of a trigger warning, just for those who may have experienced similar pasts. I grew up in a very intense religious community as a child for the first 20 years of my life. I won't share the name. I don't feel like it's necessary, but just to give context of that, I definitely grew up in a very oppressive environment in terms of celebrating individuality, celebrating spirituality, celebrating freedom and self-liberation and self-expression, and kind of, it was definitely one of those places where it was very focused on enforcing many minds to be part of one collective mind, if that makes sense, or definitely asking people to believe what everybody else was believing, or believing what was being told of us. Mine happened to be in the more Christian space, but you can find these same power dynamics in any religion or in any experience. And so for me, as a queer individual, I ran into some issues, as I'm sure one might expect, in my teenage years, high school years, into early adulthood, which resulted in some less than fantastic treatment of myself, and definitely some high pressure situations in which I was being pushed to change or to be something else. And I want to also say that I would not take back any of my experiences for the world. I wouldn't, if I was given a golden button to go back and redo it, I would not do it. And that's because I don't think I would be the person that I am, the sensitive, empathetic, trauma-led, self-caring individual that I am, if I didn't have to walk through those hallways and through that darkness and through those shadows and really kind of face down my own past and allow it to inform me about my future. I don't think I would be here having this conversation with you if that hadn't happened to me, if I hadn't experienced that type of environment. So when I finally was freed from that environment and kind of was born again in some level, because I didn't have any experience of the world, I didn't really have a ton of social skills. I was all of a sudden like a little child in a very big, scary world. But I will say that the world was not as scary as I was told it was going to be. So there's that. But we find ourselves all of a sudden, when there's nobody around to tell us what we think and believe, having to ask ourselves those same questions and identifying that belief system for ourselves, whether that falls into a religion or spirituality, or whether it's just, what is my moral code? What is my values? How do I treat people? What do I believe is right and wrong? If there is such thing, you kind of have to face those questions and start to identify that system for yourself. And I immediately gravitated towards a sense of spirituality in the universe, because there was certain aspects of my life before, of liturgy, of ritual, of prayers, of litanies. There was levels of that form of spiritual expression that really did resonate with me. They really did feel, I loved the sacredness of like high liturgical holidays and just the way the community, if you will, that I grew up in definitely was high liturgy. We had a basilica, basically a cathedral, and everything was done to the nines. Like Easter was huge and so on and so forth. But I did find connection to that form of communing with something bigger than me. And I knew there were things that I had experienced in my childhood that clued me into the fact that there's definitely something else going on in the world, bigger than us. And I never lost that. It just changed its face. I never lost that, but it changed its name. And tarot really, really connected with me. We met each other because I treat the tarot as it's its own sacred entity. It existed long before we ever put it into the form of a deck of cards. I believe that the tarot represents every human experience that there is to have as a sacred individual having a human experience. Everything about the human emotional landscape is spoken for in the tarot. And what I loved so much about it is that it gave me an opportunity to have conversations with myself on a very quiet inner level, almost looking at it from the outside. It gave me a new perspective. You know, there's always those friends that you really trust in the world that you can go to and be like, I want your perspective on this situation or on my behavior, or like, did I reacted this way? Does that seem odd to you? Or I'm feeling this feeling, but I can't really identify where it's coming from. Do you have any perspective as to like what that might be? Tarot provides that. Ultimately, it gives you a chance to have a conversation with something without, while also being within. And for me, it gave me a very safe space where I knew the tarot has no agenda. It doesn't want anything from me in the way that maybe an external human person might bring a little of their own agendas or desires into that conversation. This is like a clear vacuum in the most sacred sense in which to safely examine what's coming up in life, in our human experience. And I needed that really, really badly. And I also needed the validation of like when things were difficult or painful, to be able to go to the tarot and pull something like the Three of Swords, which often reflects this idea of pain in the heart space. Some people will be like, oh no, I look at this card and it's predicting something terrible is going to happen, or I'm going to go through a breakup, or I'm going to go through emotional pain. I don't see it that way. I don't see the tarot as a predictive thing. I see the tarot as an examination of the present moment. And so what that card actually does for me is it says, hey, I get it. I see it. It hurts and I'm sorry. And like, I can be here with you in this moment. I think that takes away, I want to recognize that there are a lot of people, even people who might be more spiritually open-minded, who may still feel fear surrounding the tarot. And that's okay. That's been layered onto these cards over centuries of capitalist infrastructure, patriarchal systems, Because if you think about it, the individuals who use the tarot generally find themselves feeling more empowered and more courageous, even. And I think many systems in history throughout centuries, throughout time, would look at something like that as a threat to the system. Because if every single one of us stepped into that power and that autonomy, like, can you imagine what the world would be like? I'm not sure that it would work, if we're going to be completely honest here. I don't know if that would be a sustainable ecosystem. So on some sense, like, I do understand where it came from, but that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it acceptable. So it serves these ancient structures, these societal constructs, for us to be afraid of the thing. Because if we're not afraid of the thing, we are immensely powerful with its usage. We're immensely powerful with its wisdom. And that took my own journey of like cutting out the noise of stuff that didn't align and recognizing that the tarot is not predicting anything. I don't use the tarot as a predictive thing. I think it has the power to allow us insight into the present moment, and then we can understand what is to come. It gives us a tool in which we get to roll up our sleeves, get our hands a little bit dirty with spirit in terms of like really investing in our own evolution, investing in our own development and growth. And sometimes when you have that insight or perspective of all of a sudden understanding what is happening to you in a current moment in time, it loses the sense of like, I'm just in chaos or confusion. It gives you the peace to be like, thank you for explaining what I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. Now, what can I do about it? Or what can I do with it? And sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes the answer is just be with me, just be here. And other times it's like, cool. One of the ones I get a lot, I'll say, from the tarot is, it's time for you to play. Put down the pencil, put down the homework, and please go play. Or there are other cards that'll say it is time to throw yourself a parade. Recognize, like, take the time to stop and reflect on where you've been to celebrate where you are. And there's essentially 78 versions of that, or sacred archetypes that say, hey, I have something that you could learn from right now. And by sacred archetypes, I'm referring to the court cards. I am a very specific energy, and I want to run alongside you as you journey through life, as you journey through the world. Will you allow me to be your running mate? Will you allow me to be your running partner? Because there's something you can gain from watching how I run. And then at some point, they'll leave us and somebody else will join. But I think that's such a more beautiful, equally balanced, empowering way to work with spirit. And I think that's why tarot and I have worked together so well. And I could go into all of this I have so many theories and thoughts, but this is kind of the journey I've come to of why I've lost a little of, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not scared of what it has to tell me, because I know it is the most beautiful, sacred, honest whisperings of my own inner voice. And that is nothing short of perfection. Like, that is nothing short of, it has no other, it doesn't want to see me fail. It doesn't want to see me get discouraged. It never means to hurt or harm me. And that's the other thing too, is when I drop in to read for somebody, I vocalize to the universe what I'm comfortable with receiving and what I'm not. And one of the things that I state is that I am not comfortable with causing harm. I'm not comfortable with presenting any information that is not in my client or myself highest and best. I'm only available to their higher self, well ancestors, ascended masters, animal ancestors. Those are the only voices that I allow to speak to me through this process. I'm sorry, this is a very long answer, but I could go on this forever.
No, I think it's beautiful. And I think, you've touched on the trauma you went through. You touched on the healing power to you, what you found through the oracle. You touched on your purpose in life and where you're going. And it's all absolutely beautiful. And I am so looking forward to hearing now, how can our listener take that same resource that's available to everybody, which in this particular situation is a tarot card.
Absolutely.
To help them understand the trauma and to move through it. And I love that you said, it's not predicting your future, because at all times we have the power to change courses. At all times we can reject the future that is currently in our way and make changes. And
the future is never fixed.
Yes. And so it doesn't predict it. It gives you a guide. It gives you some pointers, but no, you still have free will to do as you choose.
Of course.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want you to blend that. Here's how tarot helped me overcome the trauma, because me, just like you, I would not give up anything I've gone through, because that would take away the who I am today. And all that crap built this, and all that crap. And I call it crap because it was things that at the time I wish weren't there, but they were my building steps. And so we'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice? Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much. I understand trauma. I think everybody understands trauma. There's different levels of it. I didn't sign up for a level 10 trauma training this life cycle. I signed up for a level 2 or 3. Those people that have gone through a level 10, more power to you. I don't know how you held out, because mine have been hard enough. But I now want to know how you use this amazing tool to help heal, and when I say heal, it doesn't go away, but help you understand the trauma to build the you that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to try to kind of blend this as I go with like really practical and tactical things that the listener can use and can try to layer into their own journey. I think I will say this too. Also, tarot is a beautiful resource, but for many who have had extreme trauma, it is also not. I'm not encouraging it as a replacement for therapy or anything like that as well. I think it's a good partner. But I think one of the things that I've learned through using tarot, and I'm actually really blessed with the fact that I have a talk therapist who has recognized that using the tarot is a language that I understand clearly. Like, this is something I can really speak about. And so we've brought tarot into my talk therapy as well. But I think using those two together have really helped me discover one big thing. And I hope this is not something that's been discussed to death on your show. And I hope I'm not bringing something back.
Hey, if it's been discussed to get death, it's because somebody needs it. So you just do what is coming to you.
It's inner child. That's what I needed the most. Is at some point along the way, I left little Jeremy behind. Didn't do it on purpose. And honestly, it was kind of, let's just say this. Thank God that I did, because I don't think he would have been capable of handling some of the things that I experienced over time. But I ended up leaving him behind very afraid and scared and uncertain. And I remember one of my first sessions with my therapist, she asked me a really poignant question at the end of my session and said, "Where is little Jeremy right now? Visually, like literally, if you were to envision." And I burst into tears because I saw my inner child hiding under a table with a tablecloth crying. And that was one of the first moments that I actually really stopped and recognized that. And I won't say take accountability, because I don't feel guilt or shame for that. It's just what happened. It's where we are. And it's where
it was a safe place.
Yeah, it's where he needed to be until I was ready to rejoin him. And there are a lot of different things that I have done with him. One of the things that I highly recommend to people is taking the time to write letters to our younger selves at very specific moments in time. I've identified probably 2 or 3 that were very formational for me. And I kind of put myself into meditation, or you don't need to do it in meditation if that's something. Some people don't feel comfortable or safe meditating, and that's okay. But for me, kind of envisioning him climbing up on the bed beside me and writing like kind of stream of consciousness, letting him know why the things that he went through and the place that he's at in life were so vital to who I am now. Let him know how important he was, how formational he was, how brave he was, and just kind of explaining to him, we're safe now. We're safe today. And there's always more to, but like in his perception of the world, it's so easy for our inner child to catastrophize and worst case scenario everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to see my apartment and my podcast and my abilities as a medium and tarot reader and like all of the things that I've cultivated from him, he would be so proud and is so proud. And I think that moment, and also sometimes even in those letters, recognizing like, I see how hard some of the things that you faced were. And I recognize how unsafe and how unprotected you were from the people whose job was to keep you safe and make you feel loved. And people do various things with this. Some people really like to hold on to the letter as something you can come back to. For me, I like to release it. I like to use it as a ritual of release. And so I'll burn it. And this is something that sometimes I'll come back to. It's not something you have to do one and done. There's always more that we can find. But there's something about the tarot for me that allows me to connect with the simple voice. My teacher, I work with a teacher named Lindsay Mack based out of Portland, Oregon. And she taught me this idea of what she calls soul tarot, which uses the tarot specifically as a trauma healing tool. And that's really where this window into tarot this way worked for me. She taught me this idea that there are 2 voices running simultaneously in our body at all times. The first one is the voice of the mind. And the voice of the mind descends from our animal ancestors. And so it likes to do all these fancy, complicated things to cover up for the fact that it really only has one job. At all times, keep you safe, keep you alive.
Yeah.
And that voice is immediately threatened by anything that asks us to leap outside of the ordinary, or take a leap of faith, or leave the routine. That equates immediately to a lack of ability to survive. And so it'll do, forgive me, but it can be a ruthless, predatory thing at times. It knows exactly what to say. It knows exactly what to remind you of. It knows exactly what emotions, what guilt, shame, fear to pull forward in an effort to, even for a moment, for 10 minutes, for a day, a week, a year, a lifetime, to ask you to say no to the other voice. And that other voice is the voice of the soul. And that voice is infinitely quieter, far more difficult to decipher at times. But the best way I know to describe what that feels like is the feeling that you get after you make an incredibly difficult decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediately feeling of, even if it's a terribly difficult, painful decision, that little quiet feeling of, I did the right thing. That is what the voice of the soul feels like. It is quiet. And these 2 radio stations are always competing with each other to see which we'll listen to. And the more often we can get into the habit of choosing the quieter one, which tarot helps me cut through this at times. and I'm pointing at my head. It helps me cut through that, again, forgive me, the bullshit onslaught that can come through, that tumble of tangled, chaotic protective mechanisms, which is just ironic. And I want to say that too. The other thing is, like, when I recognize that that's what my brain is doing, it is really important to also like stop and have a conversation with it. Be like, hey, I hear you. I appreciate and respect your efforts here. I'm going to try to live a slightly different way. I want you to come along. You are allowed to be a 5-year-old in the back car seat kicking and screaming, but I'm not leaving you behind. I'm just asking you to climb out of the driver's seat. You can even be a passenger. I don't care. But I would like to be able to call the shots in a very different way, because the idea of saying yes to or believing in something metaphysical that we can't see or touch or feel or taste, our brain struggles with that. It's like, I am this concrete organ in your body whose job is to keep you safe, and yet you're still not going to follow me. And that can cause a little bit of chaos at times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of why I love the tarot so much, is it allows me to amplify that quieter voice and provide me enough languaging to then speak to my mind, who is throwing a temper tantrum at times.
Right.
Another idea that I want to bring up for those struggling with trauma or struggling with history. I think there's this long-standing belief that somehow, on some level, you know that feeling when sometimes you are experiencing something in life and you get this thought like, I've already been here before, I'm going backwards. You know what I mean? Or it's like all of a sudden you feel like you're going back to an emotion or a sensation that's like, I thought I got through this already. Or like, why am I making the same emotional choices? I think a lot of people experience this thing and immediately identify themselves with the regression. I'm going backwards. I've already done this before. Why am I feeling angry about something that I thought I processed this. I thought I healed from this. I want to empower people with trauma with an image. And this is another image that I borrow from Lindsay. She described this idea of life being this spiralic thing moving forward. It's not a line. It's a swirl, and it's always moving forward. And there are times in life where the spiral of the universe, the spiral of our life, might bring us particularly close to the loop from a different spiral, from a couple spirals before. They might get real close to each other. And instead of getting caught up in I'm going backwards, I'm going to say I don't believe there is anything, and I don't believe there's any such thing as regression. Because I think what's happening is there are times where we have healed and grown enough that we are capable of revisiting something that we've already experienced and then growing from further. There's some aspect of that past moment that we're feeling or sensing again that we are now capable of acknowledging, healing from, and moving forward. And that's...
I like this, because one of the things that I think in my soul is it's supposed to come back. Because if it doesn't come back, I don't know I've really healed. So when I find, oh, that situation's coming back, I guess I'm not all the way over it. Or, oh, look, it's not even triggering me anymore. So it's an experience that is so needed. It's not regressing. It's your pop quiz.
Yeah.
It's like going through school, and it's like, did you really heal? Did you learn it? If not, let's do it again. And it's just that opportunity to keep growing.
Absolutely. No, and I think it's just so important to also verbalize that all of us as human beings are experiencing this together. Even if we don't always talk about it all the time or share it that vulnerably with everybody we see around us, all of us are moving in leaps and starts. It's never this beautiful, powerful And sometimes it is. And that's amazing when you get on one of those like real like soul accelerator moments. And just, I think we've all had some of those too, where all of a sudden, like you see the world in a different way. I definitely felt that way when I started working with my teacher of like, all of a sudden I was like, I don't know if I'm capable of going back to seeing life and the world the way I saw it before this experience. And those are great and awesome. And we should hold on to those and celebrate those, but also recognize that there are other times where it's not quite as smooth sailing always. And we're all there. I'm there all the time. But that doesn't mean that I distrust my soul, distrust my spirit guides and my spirit team, distrust my tarot deck. I just know, in fact, I'll say this as if for anybody or for our listener that might be considering grabbing a tarot deck for the first time or has recently grabbed a tarot deck for the first time. I think there's these long standing traditions that were meant to gatekeep people from tarot. And one of those is the idea that like you can't purchase your own tarot deck, or that you have to come to the tarot with, I'm going to say air quote, clean hands, or like you can't come to the tarot with your mess or your emotional baggage. But I'm going to say this right now. There are times where in the rougher moments of life, I cling to my tarot deck like a life preserver. I remember one time I got my favorite deck that I own, which actually ironically was created by my teacher's partner, who created artwork to fit the deeper meanings that my teacher was explaining. It just was a real saving grace for me in that moment. I got it after a really, really painful breakup. And I didn't even have the will or wherewithal to pull. So I literally just put that tarot deck above my heart and I just laid and held it like a hug. And I think that is when tarot wants to meet us. I think that's when tarot has the capacity to give us our most honest, vulnerable insights. And I never want anyone to feel like they have to hide themselves away until they're in highest vibration or high, like
you don't need it when you're at your highest.
Yeah.
These are support tools, not look back and look how great I did tools. It's, hey, I'm struggling. I need some support. And it's there for you. So I agree with you. I have never, it's in my darkest moments when I turn to, I need clarity. My mind is so jumbled right now. And I call it my bully voice and my best friend voice.
Love that.
The one that's there for survival. The one that is telling me not to do things because it's going to hurt. The one that's keeping me down. And the best friend that supports me and pulls me up. And it's the same two voices. It's just which one do I want to turn up and turn down? And when they're both loud and I can't decipher, there are other modalities that help quiet it so that I can choose where to listen. And so I love that you also support using these in time of need. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why go cook dinner if you're not hungry? You know, right. Like, well, because, I just ate, but now it's time to cook dinner. No, you use it when you're hungry. You use it when you need it. And so I support and I agree with you completely on this.
There's a book that I highly recommend to our listener that might want to start using tarot towards healing and trauma specifically. It's a book called, I have it literally sitting on my altar right over there right now. It's called Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr. And she is, I believe, a well-known and well-researched psychologist. And so she has blended concepts in psychology and mental health with each card of the tarot. So it's almost like its own guidebook, but focusing on the deeper healing trauma aspects that can be spoken to in the cards. And I can't recommend it highly enough. I think it's a beautiful reinterpretation. And I think we all should never be afraid to take what we read in guidebooks or online or from other people. Take what works for you, leave what doesn't, and then take it further for yourself. I think sometimes there are people who fear the tarot in the sense that like, I'll never know every single card's meaning, or I might get it wrong. Trust your knowing. Trust your instincts.
Oh, now you know why I don't use tarot. I use oracle because I'm afraid of not really understanding the depth that the tarot has. So this book, Tarot for Change, is that what you called it?
Yes.
For the listener, it's already in the show notes.
Amazing.
It's there. Yep. You can just click right on it. You can go get the book. And
I'm not one that I'm not a big drop a product and things, but I really do believe in this book. I think she's come up with something powerfully unique and insightful. And I literally I'll pull one card, read her interpretation in the book, and then use that as a therapy journaling prompt. I will work with that concept that comes forward. And I feel like each time I think I've reached a new level of depth with the tarot, I find another one and I find another one. And I hope I never lose that. I hope that never goes away. And I don't think it will, but I will encourage people of never keep yourself from I have a great story, actually. I ran my first tarot course a couple years ago. I very much would like to bring it back. But one of the first things that I did, because all of my students had never touched a tarot deck in their life before, part of my requirements for them before I taught them anything about the card is I would have them hold one in front of them and kind of gaze at the artwork. I will also say that the artwork of a tarot deck does not make or break it, but it sometimes can be a window in. But I would have them hold it in front of them and just kind of almost visualize in your mind's eye the edges of the card kind of extending beyond you, almost like that scene in Narnia when they step into the painting of the Dawn Treader, if you read Chronicles of Narnia as a kid, and just kind of almost allow your intuition to step into the image that you see. And then I would kind of guide them in meditation, be like, what are you feeling? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What emotions are you just kind of instinctually feeling? What colors do you see? And then I would have them kind of step out of that and report back what they felt. And they were profoundly on the money of how I would at least approach it. Everybody should approach it differently or allow themselves to approach it differently. But that was my way of showing them, you know so much more than you think you do. If you just allow yourself the permissioning to accept and trust what comes in. Now, I'm going to speak to our listener on one other thing too. There may be a little voice coming into your head right now saying, but I'm not psychic. I'm not sensitive. I'm not a medium. I don't get that kind of thing. First and foremost, everybody has the ability to be sensitive on some level. Some may have a more natural gift towards something, but everybody has the ability. It may take us just a little bit more time and a little bit more effort to work through that bully voice, that brain voice that says, I don't trust this. I don't believe this. I don't make sense of this. But I promise you, with a little trust, a little time, a little effort, and just keep at it, you will receive information. It might just happen one day where all of a sudden you get this one thing and you're like, what was that? What was that piece of information that I got? Be patient. Just because you see people on television and on podcasts like this all the time who it seems to I could see sometimes feeling discouraged of but it sounds so easy and so fun for them. And I don't have that same experience. And I do really empathize and respect that experience of it just not being quite that simple sometimes. But I promise you, continue to state to the universe your intent of I would like to receive knowledge from you, wisdom from you, and it will come.
So how do we use this in more of a succinct way? If I was to train someone, this is how you use a tarot for your past trauma. What would we do? What is that process of healing the trauma through tarot? I understand how we use it, current situation, and to understand path, but how do I heal with it?
I find that I think what I ended up doing was I used it to almost have a conversation with myself, and I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions about, once I got through the majority of the anger and the resentment and the big emotions that are still there. But once I got to the point where I was even willing to kind of take the breath, turn around and re-examine, which not everybody, you should wait until you know in your soul that you're ready to do that. There is such a thing as turning around to face that too soon. In my opinion, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but I do believe that there are times where, like, don't push yourself to reface it before you're ready. But once I found that I was ready, and there was a lot of curiosity. I had a lot of curiosity about why. And I would literally almost have like one card pull conversations and see what insights I could glean from the card that stepped forward as an answer. I know that's not necessarily like the sexiest answer in the world of how I approached it, but I do feel like that was a huge part of it for me, was being willing to be asking some of those questions. I'm trying to think if there was any other like real specific tactics that I used besides.
That one's beautiful.
Is it? Okay.
If you can say, hey, this is the trauma I experienced, and I am willing to work through it and to put it in the closet. I don't need it anymore. I can move forward, and I just need a path, and give me a clue of what to do. And that's how I use my cards. They're my clue. That they're not. It doesn't have to be this big blasting blowhorn that yells it at you. That's not sexy at all.
Yeah.
But if it's subtle and comfortable, you're more, maybe you not, but I am more willing to follow a suggestion than a command. I do not like commandments. Nobody else tells me what to do. I am stubborn. I am crazy. And so if it comes across in a suggestion or something that feels right, then I'm good. And I'm one of those people that I don't identify as a sensitive or intuitive or clairvoyant or any of those things. I have intuition, and I trust the universe is always there for my best good. And maybe I am, but I've never felt special in that way. I have friends that are so in tune with that spiritual side, and they're amazing. And I don't know if I doubt it. I don't know why. And I, you know what? I don't care why. It works just fine. I have enough trust and enough faith. And that's all I need the listener to do, is have the trust that this could be a tool that could support you through a past trauma, a current frustration, something that you're trying to make a decision on. It helps calm that dialogue between that friend and that bully. It helps you to focus on the one that's going to support your next best good. And as long as you have that trust level, you can do this.
And it will take time. I will say that's a huge part of this too, is like we have this quote that we reference at work, and anybody who knows me will probably chuckle that I bring this up again, but it's very true. I'm not going to get it perfectly, but it's essentially, change is not lightning in a bottle. It's a bridge built brick by brick with effort and time. And sometimes it's painful and sometimes it's scary, but it can be absolutely thrilling to watch it take shape. And I believe that fully, is that it's something that I've picked away at and continued to be curious about and face little by little by little. And there'll always be more. Even last night, I had a very difficult trauma dream from the past, and I had to really find a way to shape to shake that off and find my way through the day and leave that energy behind. But I had a thought though. One great way for our listener to maybe ritualize this in a daily way, and also simultaneously come to introduce yourself with the tarot, is very simple. Each morning, just pull one card for the day and sit it somewhere visual that you can see it throughout the day. And then whether you use Tarot for Change or whatever guidebook or instructional feels, or even if you're comfortable just leaping into the unknown and trusting your intuition, whatever that meaning is that steps forward for you in the morning, remain curious throughout the day and try to identify. It's almost like a Where's Waldo? Like, where is that energy going to meet me today? And then at the end of the day, before you go to bed, you're reminded to kind of look at it and reflect, where did I meet you today? And then you'd repeat the process again tomorrow. And then each day after day after day, you get to know these cards from lived experience, from your life. I do find that tarot is most useful for me when I've developed a personal relationship with the card beyond just what somebody's told me. Mm-hmm. If I've identified, I met this card at this particular moment. And then each time it comes up again, it's like seeing a friend again. There's now a new experience that you've had with that friend that builds that relationship. I think that's a really good, kind of simple, but profoundly impactful ritual, or ritual focused way to work with the tarot and to start to allow its friendship to step in alongside through the healing and trauma process.
Wow. I love it. I love the simplicity, and I've many friends that pull a card, whether Oracle or whatever, Tarot, and they pull a card every morning. And that's what doesn't guide them for the day. But as things progress, it's how is this integrating in my life? Mm-hmm. How is this supporting me today? And I used to pull them almost every day. Since I retired and started doing this gig, I don't as often because I just quit. I don't even know why, but I definitely am picking them back up, even though I have this one on my desk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a great way to at least begin a journey. And I think there was a while where I resisted starting tarot because I'm a perfectionist and I'm a masochist and I wanted to be the best tarot reader in the world. And I'm not. But the reality is that I was holding myself back because of this perceived level at which I needed to reach before I felt comfortable trusting my readings or trusting my, and the reality, if you do that, you'll never start.
I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Is there a best?
No. Then there shouldn't be. And I think,
who is to say?
Yeah.
If you are getting answers for you, if you are consistently supporting and helping other people, you are the best for you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what anybody else's measurement is. And that's always like, listener, you don't have to be any value. There's no good or bad. Remember that good and bad is this 3-dimensional world that we're in. And it just is. And there is not better. There's not worse. There's not good. There's not bad. It just is.
Yeah.
Allow it to be for you because you are the magical being of you. There is nobody that is a better you than you. And let it happen. Let these modalities support you and allow you to become that natural person that's been hiding. That person who, I'm never going to say this word again because I get shot down and I'm going to go hide. You know what? You're safe. Give yourself the safe spot to be the person that you truly are. And that the person that doesn't need someone else to validate your purpose in life. Let you do that. That is your job. Nobody else's. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, if you're Christian or Buddhist or, the word for
atheist.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is that you feel like you are your genuine self. When we're hiding and we are trying to be something different than we really are, that's when we cause ourselves pain.
Yeah.
That's when we cause ourselves trauma. That's when we are the trauma inflictor on ourselves. And until we can let go of that and become that natural person, it's too bad.
Yeah.
There's nobody else that can do it for you.
And there's that voice will always try to isolate us from each other and try to whisper and convince us that nobody else could ever understand because nobody else has ever gone through what you're going through, and allow our voices to validate that that is not correct. You are not alone. Many people can relate to what you're feeling if you allow yourself the courage and the safe space to, maybe sometimes it requires you to start having those conversations alone and to get the clarity of knowing how you feel, but bring it forward. Allow your voice to be heard. It's very the Hierophant card in the tarot. It's, you are the teacher and mentor and guru and expert that you seek in the world and seek in others. It is within you.
It is. It so is. We are at the end, not end of time, but just the end of this hourglass thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to wind down. But Jeremy, you have been so full of wisdom and so full of insight that if I choose to allow that wisdom to become part of my experience and help mold and direct me, then I will be better. And so will our listener. But do you have some last bits of wisdom that you would like to share to just lock this all up into a cute little summary?
No pressure at all. No,
Okay, it doesn't have to be that succinct.
No, I definitely, I want to be vulnerable here and share that just because I've had this walk with the tarot and with my own spirituality and my spirit guides does not mean that I am free of hard times and fears and doubts and traumas. Like, I am not here sharing this wisdom in an effort to present this vision of like what it looks like to be beyond all of that and it'll never touch you again. What it is I've gained so much strength and courage and belief in myself and belief in the support of the team that's looking out for me in the universe, that I've learned how to navigate with a lot more ease and grace than where I began. And I know that there may be a time where even more of this trauma and history will be behind me. I'm only 30. So there's so much life to live. I fully respect and appreciate that I come from a very specific point and perspective in the journey that I've had so far. And I've also come to begin to understand the benefits and the healing power of that journey as not innately negative. It's not innately positive. It's just, it is the path that I have been placed on. It is the path that I agreed to as a soul before originating into this particular human body and this particular iteration of myself. And so I just want to encourage that I know what it feels like on to feel like you're constantly trying to grow and evolve and heal and develop, and sometimes feel like you just keep getting beaten down by life and the universe, and a particularly difficult time to be alive. It just is in our society, in our era. Don't give up. Don't lose sight of the ground behind you and the ground ahead. And I mean that of like, I'm always learning and growing and facing. Earlier this week, I had really profound anxiety and could not identify where it came from. And today, through a little bit of effort and meditation and tarot and doing the things that I know to do to look after myself, a lot of that anxiety has cleared. And now I have the privilege to sit and have a conversation with my tarot deck. What was that? What was that all about? Like, what can I learn from that moment and not vilify myself or beat myself up for allowing myself to feel anxious again or something like that. That's just not how this works. I'm not perfect. I never will be perfect. I have no interest in being perfect, but I do have interest in like, how can I use everything that I've gone through to help equip people with the information, the knowledge, the validation from externally that they're not crazy, they are okay, they are safe, they can keep going. Because I don't think I was provided a lot of that when I was starting, because I felt very alone in my journey until I've met people like you and others who can, again, that validation piece of having somebody say, yes, I know what you're talking about. I get those feelings. I understand. Empowers us so much to continue to push through whatever it is that we're facing. And I really do believe that bully voice really wants us to feel alone and feel like nobody else will understand.
You're safe when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're here to do.
But I feel that it's important to share, like, if there are some things about what we've been talking that feel like difficult to achieve or a difficult place of healing to reach, or like, how could I ever forgive people that caused me harm in the past in order to move? Like, I do respect that. And I really do understand that. Be patient, be kind, keep walking.
That's beautiful. I love the keep walking. And you do not need to be on a jet airplane to get there fast.
No.
You can take this one comfortable step at a time. You do not have to heal the world overnight.
Yeah.
One thing, pick one thing and let that be what you work on. And if a tarot card or any other type of healing I learned to meditate going to sound baths. Like all of a sudden, it added some thing that I couldn't get in my basement, but now that I can. So find that modality that helps support your process. If it's
like an
prayer,
access point,
if it's meditation, if it's a mantra, if it's a hot bath or a hot shower, doesn't matter. Any of those things can help you through the self-reflection process, setting your goals and finding that next step. And it's that next step that matters.
Yeah.
So all of the information about Jeremy are in the show notes. Reach out to him if you want any additional information that you need. I'm here for you. Jeremy's here for you. Find the coach or the person in your life that can support you. We all have unique needs. We all have unique experiences, and that person is there. There is a person that can be your accountability partner and let you know you're not alone. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.